All right. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's reading. I'm Johannes Göransson from the Creative Writing Program at Notre. I'm here to introduce tonight's reader, Jericho Brown.
All right.
Jericho's going to read for 30 minutes and then take some questions if you have any. We had an awesome discussion earlier today at Notre Dame campus, and maybe we can have some follow-up questions from there. This event is part of the Kelly Reading Series, and this is how it's described in the official language. The Kelly Community Reading Series, supported by John and Patrice Kelly, was established in 2023 to strengthen connections between the literary and scholarly communities at Notre Dame and the broader South Bend, Mishawaka community. Celebrate the history and complexity and liberatory power of the written word, and bring diverse voices together in the ongoing conversation that is global literature. It's kind of a great description. As far as those kind of descriptions go, that's a pretty good one. And I think Jericho Brown is a perfect reader for this series. Earlier today at the discussion, he talked about the crucial importance of libraries to his life as a poet, starting out as a child, when Mrs. McKinney, the local librarian in Shreveport, gave Jericho copies of Plath and Sexton and Lowell, but even continuing to this day, a repeat offender at and that was the wrong metaphor, a repeated user of the library as part of his general process as a writer to continually read not just one book or one poem by a poet, but to really exhaustively study poetry and poets. Since his days with Miss McKinney, Jericho has gone on to great acclaim as a poet. He's written 3 books, Please, the New Testament, and the Tradition, and he has received a whole slew of awards, Guggenheim, Whiting Award, NEA, and for the Tradition, the Pulitzer Prize. I'll just quickly list some of the things that really stand out to me about his poetry. First of all, like the striking visuals. My first love drove a burgundy car. I don't want to leave a messy corpse. The startling metaphors, the daring syntax that twists and turns and back on itself, the surprising line breaks, the primacy of sound and the continual reinvention of form. With these technical qualities, he generates some of the liveliest, most intense poems you'll hear. A lot of them are about family life, a lot of them about violence that comes from outside of the family and from inside of the family. In one of my favorite lines, he writes, "I'm writing to you from the other side of my body." And I love that because it's not the other side of life, or it's not the other side of the world, but it's from the other side of the body, because these poems are still so much about and inside of the body. Please welcome Jericho Brown.
Thank you for the introduction, Johannes. A big thank you to Joyelle, McSweeney, and to Paul and everybody. And to the students that I met with earlier today, who were really, really fabulous. And to my friend, Mark Sanders, my friend and my colleague, Mark Sanders, who's here today. And to all of you for coming here, I really appreciate it. I'm going to read you some poems. Can I read you some poems? What's on the floor right there? It is a piece of paper. Oh no, I just wanted to make sure I had everything, but I think it's okay that is there. No, it's not going to bother me. I wouldn't. There's a poem that Emiliano wrote for me. Let me see. Emiliano, where are you? Come here. Emiliano, can you read this?
Yes.
I think it's meant to be because I noticed the piece of paper. Read it. It's a cento. Tell them what a cento is.
A cento is a composition of found language. And the found language here are words that my dear Jericho said at the conversation a few hours ago, including very frequently, "You know what I mean?" Beat your kids and leave them at the library. We are each other, I mean that quite literally. Tongue-tickled testicles, don't make it political. It's never too soon to leap sound to sound. A knee-slapping Langston in obsidian necklace, looking at the ceiling because that's where God is. You have to be important to yourself, make the big kittens matter. I wave and breaks, wake and bake, cut direct, do as you don't expect. And I do it for a living in that if I didn't do it, I would die. Messy and nerdy, and yeah. My, oh my, oh my.
I appreciate this. I don't think I said testicles today. I actually know every time I've ever said testicles in my life. Can I read you some poems? Is that all right? Where I'm from, we always, no matter what we were beginning, we'd always begin with prayer. So, prayer of the backhanded. Not the palm, not the pear tree switch, not the broomstick, nor the closest extension cord, not his braided belt, but God, bless the back of my daddy's hand, which, holding nothing tightly against me and not wrapped in leather, eliminated the air between itself and my cheek. Make full this dimpled cheek unworthy of its unfisted print, and forgive my forgetting the love of a hand hungry for reflex, a hand that took no thought of its target, like hail from a blind sky, involuntary, fast, but brutal in its bruising. Father, I bear the bridge of what might have been a broken nose. I lift to you what was a busted lip. Bless the boy who believes his best beatings lack intention, the mark of the beast. Bring back to life the son who glories in the sin of immediacy, calling it love. God, save the man whose arm, like an angel's invisible wing, may fly backward in fury, whether or not his son stands near. Help me hold in place my blazing jaw as I think to say, excuse me. You are welcome. You don't have to clap after every poem, but you are welcome to. I'm only going to read 763 poems. I hope your hands don't start hurting. Labor. I spent what light Saturday sent sweating, and learned to cuss cutting grass for women kind enough to say they couldn't tell the damn difference between their mowed lawns and their vacuumed carpets just before handing over a $5 bill rolled tighter than a joint and asking me in to change a few light bulbs. I called those women old because they wouldn't move out of a chair without my help or walk without a hand at the base of their backs. I called them old, and they must have been. They're all dead now, dead, and in the earth I once tended. The loneliest people have the earth to love, and not one friend their own age. Only mothers to baby them, and big sisters to boss them around. Women you want to please, and pray for the chance to say please too. I don't do that kind of work anymore. My job is to look at the childhood I hated and say, I once had something to do with my hands. I wrote this next poem. I'll just say this next poem. I wrote this next poem as kind of a little bit of a lie. This next poem is the most unoriginal poem I've ever written, and there's a way that this poem too is a bit of a cento. It is completely taken from phrases and sentences that I heard people say when I was growing up in the school, in the church, and in the neighborhood where I grew up. Autobiography. Keep the line steady. Keep your back straight. Keep coming back for more. Keep fucking with me, Cletus. Keep putting your hands on me like that, and you'll always have a place to lay your head. Keep my waistline down. Keep your figure up. Keep your man happy. Keep a woman crazy. Keep your daddy off your mama, or next time I'm calling the police. Keep these nappy-headed children off my green, green grass. Keep talking smart if you want to. Keep looking at my man and I'll cut you a new eyelid. Keep looking me in my face when you tell your next lie. Keep on walking, I ain't talking to you anymore. Keep holding that last note. Keep singing while I get the splinter out. Keep singing for Jesus, baby, and everything will be all right. Keep me in your prayers. Keep us in your thoughts. Keep your eyes on the black one. He ain't got no sense. Keep your money in your pocket, Nelson. These hoes giving it away. Keep this one occupied. I'll get his wallet. Keep on living, honey, and you'll get old too. This next poem has a title that's a phrase I heard very often, that I hear very often in Louisiana and from people who are from Louisiana. And if you don't know this phrase, its meaning will become clear as I read the poem. 4:30 in the morning. My mother grew morning glories that spilled onto the walkway toward her porch because she was a woman with land who showed as much by giving it color. She told me I could have whatever I worked for. That means she was an American. But she'd say it was because she believed in God. I am ashamed of America and confounded by God. I thank God for my citizenship in spite of the timer set on my life to write these words. I love my mother. I love black women who plant flowers as sheepish as their sons. By the time the blooms unfurl themselves for a few hours of light, the women who tend them are already at work. Blue, I'll never know who started the lie that we are lazy, but I'd love to wake that bastard up at 4:30 in the morning, toss him in a truck, and drive him under God past every bus stop in America to see all those black folk waiting to go work for whatever they want. A house, a boy to keep the lawn cut, some color in the yard. My God, we leave things green. This next poem is ultimately about a television show none of you've ever seen before. It was a show that was on in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was called The Jeffersons. Isabel Sanford played the leading lady of the Jeffersons, Louise Jefferson, and it might be of use to you to know that she had a very distinctive voice, such that when she said her husband's name, it always sounded like George. Sitcom. A rabbit tried to kill Louise once when I was a kid. I'm saying Louise now, but I have said Miss Louise then, as she appeared on our screens once a week, wearing blues I haven't seen since. Her long hair curled, combed out, and pushed up into a volume so thick you felt both the power of an afro and the requirement of a relaxer on a woman rounder than most of her penthouse neighbors. Hair that wouldn't move no matter how much she shook when she yelled at her husband or when trapped by a man dressed as a rabbit who wielded a snub-nosed .38 special we thought scary before we knew what an AR-15 could do. Miss Louise never sang, but she had a voice that left you wondering how singing might sound on her. She was that beautiful and dark. They had a grown son. She wasn't a young woman. By the time I saw the Halloween rerun, the youngest men in my hometown had organized themselves into colors, red and blue. They were patriots, like patriots. They'd shoot, and they'd shoot each other too. They'd shoot you if you accidentally scuffed their shoes at a club or a concert. They'd shoot driving by from their cars into houses and parks. They'd sell you something so good you'd sell our TV to get more of it. And I cannot say I didn't love them. They killed my first girlfriend, a stray bullet meant for her brother, and I loved them. They killed my cousin, but some of them were my other cousins, and I still loved us in all my fear of our gold teeth and oversized dickies. They kill me today, yet remain a problem I need to solve. I'm grown now. I know Louise was the star of the show, the leading lady. No writer would kill her off on a sitcom. Murder is meant for real life. Anybody can get a gun, but nobody kills Louise Jefferson. There is a place where black people don't die, a deluxe apartment in the sky. All week I worried about the next episode. Mornings I dressed myself and my little sister, making sure we wore nothing that looked like the flag. And when the appointed night fell, the jokes were still funny. The rabbit apprehended. The white rabbit didn't murder the black lady. No, not on TV. This next poem owes a bit of a debt to this very long and beautiful sonnet sequence, ultimately about the end of World War II. It's a sonnet sequence by Gwendolyn Brooks called Gay Chaps at the Bar. I really love it. You should check it out if you don't know it. And it also owes a debt to Homer, as it makes use of images that we become aware of through the Odyssey. Hero. She never knew one of us from another, so my brothers and I grew up fighting over our mother's mind. Like sun-colored suitors in a Greek myth, we were willing to do evil. We kept chocolate around our mouths. The last of her mother's lot, she cried at funerals, cried when she whipped me. She whipped me daily. I am most interested in people who declare gratitude for their childhood beatings. None of them took what my mother gave, waking us for school with sharp slaps to our bare thighs. That side of the family is darker. I should be grateful, so I will be. No one on earth knows how many abortions happened before a woman risked her freedom by giving that risk a name, by taking it to breast. I don't know why I am alive now, that I still cannot impress the woman who whipped me into being. I turned my mother into a grandmother. She thanks me by kissing my sons. Gratitude is black, black as a hero returning from war to a country that banked on his death. Thank God, it can't get much darker than that. The title of this next poem, again, is a word that I hear commonly used in the South. Sometimes I wonder if Indiana is the South. So, I mean, I know it's not, but you know, we got the Klan from here, so maybe it's a little bit of the South. The word is nim. It means that person and everyone you associate with that person. If to put it into context for you, if you grew up with someone and you don't see them, you grew up with someone and when you knew them, let's say you played together, so therefore they knew your family, you knew their family. After years, when you see them again, you might say to them, "Hey, how you doing? How is your mama?" And them, and that's how that word works. And them. They said to say goodnight and not goodbye. Unplugged the TV when it rained. They hid money in mattresses, so to sleep on decisions. Some of their children were not their children. Some of their parents had no birth dates. They could sweat a cold out of you. They'd wake without an alarm telling them to. Even the short ones reached certain shelves. Even the skinny cooked animals too quick to catch. And I don't care how ugly one of them arrived. That one got married to somebody fine. They fed families with change and wiped their kitchens clean. Then another century came. People like me forgot their names. That's how you know that was poem 300. Y'all scared to clap. We only have 350 to go. I wrote this next poem after finding out about and being confounded by the very long list of people who committed suicide while in police custody under very strange circumstances, strange to say the least. Examples of one of these suicides include Jesus Huerta in North Carolina, who after having been patted down while handcuffed on the walk from the police cruiser to the building where he was to be booked, supposedly somehow managed to shoot himself in the back corner of his head. Or Victor White III in Louisiana, where I'm from, who after having been patted down while handcuffed, sitting in the back seat of a police cruiser, somehow, supposedly, managed to shoot himself in the upper back. Victor White III in Louisiana, also Sandra Bland in Texas, who after a day of what looks to me like fighting for her life, hung herself with a trash book bag. Now, she hung herself in a cell where there is live video footage in each cell. It wasn't just for Sandra Bland. In every cell, there is live video footage of what is going on in that cell, in that particular jail. In Sandra Bland's cell, though, there seems to be some sort of technical difficulty, so the video footage goes out, and we're told by the coroner that technical difficulty must have occurred at just the moment that Sandra Bland hung herself with a trash bag. Bullet points. I will not shoot myself in the head, and I will not shoot myself in the back, and I will not hang myself with a trash bag. And if I do, I promise you, I will not do it in a police car while handcuffed or in the jail cell of a town I only know the name of because I have to drive through it to get home. Yes, I may be at risk, but I promise you, I trust the maggots who live beneath the floorboards of my house to do what they must to any carcass, more than I trust an officer of the law of the land to shut my eyes like a man of God might, or to cover me with a sheet so clean my mother could have used it to tuck me in. When I kill me, I will do it the same way most Americans do. I promise you, cigarette smoke, or a piece of meat on which I choke, or so broke I freeze in one of these winters we keep calling worst. I promise if you hear of me dead anywhere near a cop, then that cop killed me. He took me from us and left my body, which is, no matter what we've been taught, greater than the settlement a city can pay a mother to stop crying, and more beautiful than the new bullet fished from the folds of my brain. Say thank you. Say I'm sorry. I don't know whose side you're on, but I am here for the people who work in grocery stores that glow in the morning and close down for deep cleaning at night, right up the street and in cities I mispronounce, in towns too tiny for my big black car to quit, and in every wide corner of Kansas where going to school means at least one field trip to a slaughterhouse. I want so little, Another leather-bound book, a gimlet with a lavender gin. Bread so good when I taste it, I can tell you how it's made. I'd like us to rethink what it is to be a nation. I'm in a mood about America today. I have PTSD about the Lord. God save the people who work in grocery stores. They know a bit of glamour is a lot of glamour. They know how much it costs for the eldest of us to eat. Save my loves and not my sentences. Before I see them, I draw a mole near my left dimple, add flair to the smile they can't see behind my mask. I grin or lie, or maybe I wear the mouth of a beast. I eat wild animals, while some of us grow up knowing what gnocchi is. The people who work at the grocery don't care. They say, thank you. They say, sorry, we don't sell motor oil anymore. With a grief so thick you could touch it. Go on, touch it. It is early. It is late. They have washed their hands. They have washed their hands for you, and they take the bus home. I'm reading to you retrospectively, which is to say I'm reading new poems, and I'm reading to you from my first book, Please, and I'm reading to you from my second book, The New Testament. My mother's still angry with me about that title. And I'm reading to you from my most recent book, The Tradition. One of the features of The Tradition is a form I invented called the duplex. The duplex is at once a hustle, a sonnet, and a blues poem. And you'll hear all three of those elements in this example of the duplex that I'll read for you now. Duplex. I begin with love, hoping to end there. I don't want to leave a messy corpse. I don't want to leave a messy corpse full of medicines that turn in the sun. Some of my medicines turn in the sun. Some of us don't need hell to be good. Those who need most need hell to be good. What are the symptoms of your sickness? Here is one symptom of my sickness. Men who love me are men who miss me. Men who leave me are men who miss me in the dream where I am an island. In the dream where I am an island, I grow green with hope. I'd like to end there. Pause. From bed to dresser drawer and all while rolling latex down, he'd whistle, and I felt daily at first a chore, a long walk without trees. If anyone I should have known, I who hate for people to comment that I must be happy just because they hear me hum. I want to ask if they ever heard of slavery, the work song. The best music is made of subtraction. The singer seeks an exit from the scarred body and opens his mouth, trying to get out. Or at least this is how I came to understand Willie whistling his way into me. What was my last name? Did he remember? Had I said we both wanted to be rid of desire? How it made even the shower a rigorous experience. It driving my coughing Corolla across Highway 90 at the darkest time of morning. It opening his dead bolted door. Us splayed as if for punishment at every corner of the carpet. Then pause for the condom, elastic ache against death, heavy in his hand, and something our fingernails couldn't reach, itching out a song. He was not content. He was not bored. If I had known the location of my own runaway breath, I too would have found a blues blues. Poor Willie whistling around my last name, wrapping his gift in safety. Poor me thinking if the man moves inside me, I must be empty. If I hide inside the man, I must be cold. I'd like to end with some love poems. Can I read you some love poems? You know you have to ask for consent. For this next poem, you might only want to know, I don't know if you need to know this for this poem, but I'm always fascinated by this fact. Billy Strayhorn wrote Lush Life while he was still in his teens. Lush Life is one of my favorites. It's easy. It's one thing to have favorite singers. It's very difficult to have favorite songs. But whenever I come across a singer who has covered Lush Life, whenever I see that on a track listing, I get very excited. I'm always excited about the various versions of Lush Life, partially because it's such a difficult song to sing. It's sort of known for its difficulty. As a matter of fact, I recently had an interview for PBS with this jazz singer who I love, whose work I love. Her name is Samara Joy, and we had this conversation about Lush Life, and she was saying how much she loved to sing the song because it was a challenge. She said, while you are singing Lush Life, you have to concentrate on every note if you want to get it right. So I'm really excited about that, about this song that this poem is named after. Queen Latifah has a version of, everybody who's anybody cuts a version of Lush Life. Bands have a hard time playing it too. They don't like playing it. Often bands don't like playing it, but Queen Latifah has a version. My favorite version is probably Natalie Cole's because it's crazy and scratchy. Obviously, her father, Nat King Cole, had a really gorgeous version of Lush Life. Every time I think about the fact that Billy Strayhorn wrote Lush Life while he was still in his teens, I really hate Billy Strayhorn. Track 1, Lush Life. The woman with the microphone seems to hurt you, to see you shake your head. The mic may as well be a leather belt. You drive to the center of town to be whipped by a woman's voice. You can't tell the difference between a leather belt and a lover's tongue. A lover's tongue might call you bitch, a term of endearment where you come from, a kind of compliment preceded by the word sing in certain nightclubs. A lush little tongue you have, you can yell, sing, bitch, and I love you with a shot of Patron at the end of each phrase from the same bar stool every Saturday night. But you can't remember your father's leather belt without shaking your head. That's what satisfies her, the woman with the microphone. She does not mean to entertain you, and neither do I. Speak to me in a lover's tongue. Call me your bitch, and I'll sing the whole night long. I love poetry, so I guess that's clear. I love poetry. But there's only one thing, I sort of mentioned this today during the conversation on campus. There's only one thing that I really, that I love more than poetry. No, if I get a life, I'm driving my car on a busy interstate in Atlanta, and I get a line of poetry that I think is good, I will pull my car over so I can write the line down. Or I will sometimes be typing in my phone in an elevator and I'm really trying to get something down because I want to remember it and I don't want to lose it. But the only thing that I love more than poetry is cuddling. And I could get a whole poem. I could get a poem that I know will lead to my Nobel Prize, but I am not getting out of that bed if I'm cuddling. I will lose that poem. Stand. Peace on this planet, or guns glowing hot. We lay there together as if we were getting something done. It felt like planting a garden or planning a meal for a people who still need feeding. All that touching or barely touching, not saying much, not adding anything. The cushion of the skin, and occasional sigh. All seemed like work worth mastering. I'm sure somebody died while we made love. Somebody killed somebody black. I thought then of holding you as a political act. I may as well have held myself. We didn't stand for one thought, didn't do a damn thing. And though you left me, I'm glad we didn't. Last poem I'll read for this reading is the poem that turns out to be the last poem in my last book. It's also the last duplex in my last book. I mentioned to you earlier that we talk about that the duplex is a sonnet, a blues poem, and a hustle all at once. This particular duplex adds a layer of form, as it is also a cento. As you know, a cento takes all of its lines from other poems, usually by other poets. This cento is a little different in that it is completely made up of lines from the other duplexes in the book, because I'm a nerd. And I should say, especially being among comrades and compatriots and the fellowship that we enjoy as writers today, my favorite way of being on earth, the thing that I am most grateful to God for about my writing, is that I will always be able to look back at comradeship and fellowship with other writers from whom I learned so much. And I love the fact that when writers get together, they get together. And I like, even last night, when I met Joyelle McSweeney, and it's so interesting to see Joyelle become such a serious human being on this earth, a very serious person. You know, when I met Joyelle McSweeney, I fell in love with her because I noticed if there was music, she would dance. She's just like me. And then last night when we went to eat, there was music and you started dancing. I was like, there go to Joyelle, I know what's up. So I was very happy to see that, and I'm really grateful that I get to be a part of that world with writers. You know, writers get together and we sort of, we have a good time, but we also tease each other and jab at each other. And there's always this sort of funny conversation about who has the superior genre. You know, is it the fiction writers, or is it the nonfiction writers, or is it the journalists, or is it the poets? You know, is it the memoirists? And I really love doing that with them because I know can't no prose writer read you the last page of their book. Duplex, cento. My last love drove a burgundy car, color of a rash, a symptom of sickness. We were the symptoms, the road, our sickness. None of our fights ended where they began. None of the beaten end where they began. Any man in love can cause a messy corpse. But I didn't want to leave a messy corpse obliterated in some lilied field. Stench obliterating lilies of the field, the murderer, young and unreasonable. He was so young, so unreasonable, steadfast and awful, tall as my father. Steadfast and awful, my tall father was my first love. He drove a burgundy car. Thank you. So this is the point at which I will take questions. If anyone has any questions, you can ask me whatever you want about my writing or about writing in general. I might be able to answer because I do have a PhD in this stuff. And or you can, maybe you just want to ask me, how long it took me to get my hair done like this. But whatever you have to ask me, I will answer it now. And I know people are sort of shy to start, so I will start by finishing the answer to a question that I did not. We sort of ran out of time. And I did not get to finish an answer to a question. I don't think I see her, but there was a young lady in the audience today who very pointedly asked me what advice I had for people who wanted to be poets but did not want to make poetry sort of their main money-making career. I let her know at that time that she didn't have that to worry about. It won't be her. You know, I shouldn't. I mean, you know, I won a MacArthur, so I shouldn't say it because I ain't going. You know, I'm in retirement now. Anyway, I'm playing. So she asked me that question, and I told her, you know, the thing that you hear about reading and writing, that there really are sort of three levels to that. And the first one is that you be reading all the time, and that you systematize your reading, and that as a reader that you look for strategy rather than subject. And writing, that there is a time of day that you set and that you meet yourself, that you are there for you, that you get writing done daily as possible, and that you're okay with that. If you're writing every day, then you end up with something good. If you're not writing every day, then you end up with a lot of bad on the way to good. But if you're writing every day, yes, for many days you will write trash. But so what? It's just like pictures. Do y'all know this? All of my friends, they think I'm so photogenic, and I'm not. It's just that when it's time to take pictures, I take a lot of pictures. If you take a lot of pictures, something's going to be worthy of the dating app. Does that make sense? And then the number 3 thing that I didn't get to, that I didn't say, that I hope you know this person who asked me this question, and I hope that you, and maybe you do, I think maybe she's in your class, maybe you can, she's at choir practice? Wow. Maybe you, bless God, maybe you can forward this information to her. The number 3 thing that is very important is to live life as much as possible. And the way I think of that is to live life like a poet. When you read poets' poems, a lot of stuff is going on in the poems, because poets break hearts and get their hearts broken and climb mountains and jump off of mountains. And they do all that because they're willing to live big. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? So you have to live, and that's sort of the part A of this 3rd thing. And then the part B is for you to be where the poets are. If there's a reading, if there's a group, that you being a poet automatically makes you an ambassador for poetry. Much more than any other art, I find that poets are always involved in a kind of ambassadorship for poetry. Poets always have a blog, or are writing reviews, or are mentoring, or teaching in some way, or are on the road trying to tell everybody the good news about poetry. And that means you have to be where they are. One of the wonderful things about being a poet is that when I get somewhere, they're the poets, and we are together. And so you want to go wherever the poets might be. And I think that's the way toward becoming what you want to be as a poet. Okay, any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of a roundabout question, but in the Q&A today you were talking about poems about kittens, so there's some poems about kittens and that, but one thing that all poems about kittens seem to have is that they name the kitten. It's always worth reading just to watch the name move around the poem, you know, like Anchorman and Offering and all the kitten poems.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Those are good. So this is actually a question about names and naming, and it seems, especially in the tradition, the urgency of naming things, whether it's the type of car or the narcissus or Eric, like the importance of naming. So I just wonder about you and names. Do you as your ear pick up names, or is it like a conscious strategy that's in the pack of strategies to think through and to deploy a name?
I think it is, and if it is, I think it's something that I learned from 2 sources. One would be, quite honestly, one would be Rita Dove, who I think has some really interesting ways of making adjective-noun combinations. She always has a modifier that you would not expect in front of the noun, so it's the reason why she can say things like vivid blood and what is that, pure, what does she say? Nothing, pure nothing in the middle of the day, you know. I really like that. Or vanishing cricket, right, which is a phrase. And there's this poem called Daystar by Rita Dove that I like to teach because it makes use of that. And I think that's one way to think about that naming, like how do I pin this down and make it as specific as possible? Or how do I animate what is otherwise, well, how do I make music out of something such that you see something you already wouldn't know of. So the sky is never blue or the grass is never green. It's always doing something such that it's more than what it is, if that makes sense. And that way you can see something else in the poem that you otherwise would not see. So that's one place. And then the other would probably be the poet Lucille Clifton, who actually has a poem in which she says that it's ultimately a poem about being a poet. And she says in this poem, I wish I could remember the title of it, but she says in this poem that she is like Adam, the namer of things. And she has this idea, it seems through the poem and through her life and work, that it is a responsibility of the poet to always be naming things. And that responsibility literally comes all the way from Adam. That what our job, like one thing we know human beings do, is that we see a thing and to better understand it and to be able to understand it from anything else, we give it a name, right? And that giving a name to a thing allows you to be closer to it, allows you to know it, which is also the purpose of metaphor itself, right? Metaphor itself, that's why metaphor has two parts, and one part is tenor, that's the thing that you actually don't know, but is sitting right in front of you, and the vehicle, which helps you know the thing better. So when I say the linebacker was a bear, you don't go to the football game expecting to see a bear, and you don't think I lied when there's no bear at the football game. You know something about the bear brought the linebacker to you, and so you know it better. So I just think it's my job. Do you know what I mean? Other questions? Yes. Yes.
I was wondering how you developed your way of talking your poems, speaking your poems. Because when I read my poems, I just kind of say them, and I don't say them as cool as you do. So I was wondering, how did you get inspired by somebody else, or did you just come from you?
I talked about a little bit today growing up in the Black church, and I think that's probably 1/3 of it. I think, I'm writing this poem right now. I'm working on these series of poems that I'm calling, they're sort of mini poems without a title, but the overarching title for them is Black Dignity. And there is a way that when I was growing up, there were people who otherwise might have, just because they were standing up in front of people, they wanted to really announce whatever it was that they had to announce in church in particular, which was sort of the proving ground for your humanity, right? It was the place where you got to see people being human beings, and you got to be a human being, and everybody looked at each other, you got dressed up to go, and when you spoke well. Do you know what I mean? And I think part of that just has to do with growing up in that situation and having a pastor who I thought of as one of the best orators ever, the Reverend Harry Blake, who when he would speak, would deliver things certain ways, and I always thought that's just how you talk when you get in front of people. So I think that's part of it. Another thing probably just has to do with, I like to hear what's happening in the poem as slowly as possible, and yet have a personality come through during the reading. I think the important thing, no matter what you're doing, I think I talked about this a little bit earlier today, or meant to, maybe I didn't talk about this. You had a question about putting a book together. Whether you're teaching a class or putting a book together or driving or giving a poetry reading, whatever the thing is you do, you really want to do it the way you want it done. You want to put into the world what does not exist as you wish it would exist. This is the reason why I get to be. How is it possible that there would be a poet after Hopkins? How is it possible that there would be a poet after Gwendolyn Brooks? What do we need poets for after Gwendolyn Brooks? We need poets because I can imagine somewhere in that library a little space where there are things that have not been said the way I would say them. And that if I create that space in the library, if I can put my book there, then suddenly all the other books are made new because they are changed because I said things the way I say them. Does that make sense? And so that's when I give a poetry reading, I try to give the reading that I would like to see. If that makes sense. Other questions? Yes.
I have a question that's somewhat related.
definitely don't hear it in the voice I perform it in. I think part of it, that I was sort of doing thirds, right? There's the lectures, there's making the thing you want to see, which is 2/3, and then there's the third is me trying to reach that, but never getting there. Like when I hear, so I'll tell you what I do hear when I hear my poems. When I talked today a little bit during the talk about being a kid and reading poems in the library, and I knew I was into a poem. I knew I really liked it. I really thought a poem was doing what it was supposed to be doing because I could hear it. In spite of the fact that no one was reading aloud to me and I wasn't reading aloud to myself. This is how I know Dickens. This is actually how I know Dickinson is good. I would be reading the poem and I could hear it. Does that make sense? And I think when I hear a line that I think is of use in a poem, I hear it in that same voice that I heard it even then. And when I'm reading poems to this day, I can hear it. The poets I love most, Clifton is a really good example of this. I mentioned her earlier. I can always hear her. But then when you see a poet live, they don't sound like that. They sound like them, but there's sort of I don't know if it's like an ultra voice or an uber voice that I always think of as the voice of poetry. And it's the voice of poetry for me, no matter the tone of the poem. Whether it's Peter Gizzi or whether it's Allen Ginsberg, I'm thinking of poets who are really humorous in ways, I still can hear it that way. Does that make sense? Which has been really useful to me because the poems I'm writing most recently make an attempt, if not at being humorous, at least at being comic. Other questions? Yes.
So what inspired you to write these duplex poems and that combination of structure?
Yeah, I wrote the duplexes in early 2009. I literally wrote all of them in early 2019. I had this really wonderful, beautiful experience of writing half of my last book in a very short amount of time. I wrote most of it between Thanksgiving of 2017 and Martin Luther King Day of 2018. And I wrote so many poems that I was scared. I really felt like I was, how you spend a lot of your life, I think you might know. You spend a lot of your life wondering what you're supposed to be doing, and then you figure out what you're supposed to be doing, because you're not good at anything else. And then once you figure out what you're supposed to be doing, you're like, all right, here I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, bro. Do you know what I mean? And then suddenly I could not stop writing. I was writing everywhere I was going. I was staying up sometimes for 24 hours because I'm a kind of person, if I get a line, I don't want to lose it. And I just started being an administrator or like a college administrator. I don't know how that happened to me. But I started doing that, so I would be writing until 7 a.m., and then I'd have a 9 a.m. meeting. Do you know what I mean? It was crazy. But it was like the most exhausting and yet the most exhilarating time of my life. And I wrote something like 40 pages of poetry in that period. And before that period, the poems were sort of eking out. Like I was always writing, but I wasn't into no poems. They were just eking out a little. And so I had this, when you're really writing, when things are going well, it feels like it's like coming off of you. Like you'll find, when you're really writing, you will find that even when you're not writing, every once in a while, in the air, you're doing your hands like this. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You're doing, anybody who's ever written a dissertation knows this. There's this moment where you're just, you don't like it, but you ain't got nothing to say, you're just sitting on the subway. Do you know what I mean? Because you have that practice of doing this a lot. And because I had that feeling, I thought I should try to do this thing that I always thought to try to do. But I felt like I was a poet. I'm a poet. I write so much I don't sleep. I write through the flu. I was really afraid. I really thought I was gonna die because I was writing all these poems, one right after the other, and all I ever knew that I could do well was write poetry. So I thought oh, God is giving me my last poems clearly. But I didn't die or anything, so it's okay. So I I thought now is the time to try this thing that I've never tried before because I thought trying it was so silly. Or I thought I wasn't smart enough to try it. Or do you understand what I mean? So I just took the leap to work on them, and I wanted to make the duplex because I wanted some sort of manifestation in my poems of how I feel in the world as a person of many identities, all of which I experience 100%. I am not 66% black and 12% queer and 2% Southern. I am everything I am 100%. I am 100% my mama's son. Do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like I hold all those identities all the way. And because I hold them all the way, I wanted to do the same thing formally. I wanted to make a poem that was indeed these three forms all at once, whole. Does that answer you? In terms of inspiration, that's where it came from. Thank you. Are we clapping? Oh, you're like, I'm clapping you off, but I got another question.
I clapped it because I like the answer. But also, what about calling them duplexes? Did that come in before or later? Is that a great name?
Yeah, it came later. I mean, as I was writing them, after I wrote the first, because of the way I wrote them, in this sort of pastiche-making way, with several lines literally all over my house cut up in slivers of paper, after I finished, because what I thought I was writing was one poem, but then after you write one, you're like, oh, I did that. Now I've got all these other lines sitting around, so I made another one, and then I made another one, and then I made another one, and then I was making so many that I didn't have to put the lines together in that pastiche way. I could go from top to bottom. And what I noticed about them is that, like this piece of architecture, the duplex, which is very prevalent where I'm from in Louisiana, it's like one house with two addresses, right? And I really wanted to name that. There's something that happens in the repeated line where you understand that in order to repeat a line, and this is the case for any form in repeated lines, whether it is the duplex or the villanelle or the pantoum, that when that line comes back, it must be repurposed. It must be made new. And I was thinking a lot, that was a time in our nation where people were talking a great deal about divisiveness, which was very surprising to me because I had never known it to be any other way. Do you understand what I mean? So yeah, I was just thinking about this newscaster. His name was Max. He's like the first black newscaster, and he used to do, who knows his name? His name was Max something. It is evading me now, but I remember he did these reports when I was a very young kid about Washington, D.C. being this black city inside this place that always gets reported on as if it is white America, but in actuality, the city itself is a black place. And I was sort of interested in that as my earliest understanding that there is divisiveness, that things are divided, that we are together and yet unaware of each other. You can live with the exact same floor plan on either side of a duplex and have absolutely no relationship to or idea of the family next door to you. And so I wanted to do something that would, I guess in the poem, bring those families together. Does that answer you? Any other questions? Yes?
When was your earliest moment as a creative when you knew that you were a creative? What did that feel like to you? How did that translate?
I was a student at Dillard University, the small HBCU liberal arts school in New Orleans, Louisiana. I knew I don't remember not wanting to write poems, but I always knew. But the way you put the question makes me want to narrow it down in a different way, and I guess I didn't have any idea of really what I was going to do in order to make money happen, but I knew it was time to graduate. And my dad had this huge expectation that I would be going to law school, and I just did not want that to happen. I just could not imagine. I'd taken an LSAT, and I actually did everything in my power to do poorly on the LSAT, and then I did well on it anyway. It was very strange. I didn't study for it was horrible, and then I missed all the deadlines for applying to school, and my dad found this way for me to still be able to apply to the Law Center at Southern University late. And I was like, damn, I'm gonna have to be a lawyer. And and I remember I had this meeting with my teacher, my poetry teacher at the time. Her name's Mona Lisa Saloy. She's still there. And my poems were not very good, and she would read them and fix them for me, or try to. And I remember we had this meeting, and she said at the end of the meeting, after we had worked on this poem together, she said, it's not where you want it. I can tell it's not where you want it. It's not where it needs to be. And I said, yeah, you're right. And she said, but what are you gonna do with all of this? It's not where you want it, but you got all this language, you make images like they're nothing, your metaphors are better than they were 4 years ago when you first came. I have some shame about this, because as black writers are generally very good at metaphor automatically. You know that because of hip hop, for instance. And I was always very bad at metaphor. I had to really read a lot of people's metaphors to train myself in that way of making, that one. There are many elements to poetry, but the making of metaphor being one of them, I had to really work toward. I'm better now than I used to be. But she was giving me all these compliments about what my poems could do, but weren't yet doing. And she's like, what are you gonna do with all this language? And I said, I don't know. And she said, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna be a poet. And then she turned around and went about the meeting was over. And I left her office thinking that that's what I was gonna do. That I was going, I sort of always knew that. But I felt like she had told me that all I needed was a little training, or a lot of training in my case, but that I needed some training, and that if I got that training, I could get better at doing it. And I really just in that moment, walking out of her office, committed myself to it in a much bigger way than I had before. Before, I was always trying to make it my hobby, as opposed to understanding that I wanted it to be my life. Does that answer you? Teachers are great, man. There's something. They change your life. Any other questions?
So when you were first starting out and you did the rejections from submissions, how did you keep going? Was there ever a point where you thought, ooh, maybe they're right, maybe I'm not cut out for this? Or are you always like, they don't know what they're thinking, I'm great?
No, when people reject my poems, I think they don't like my poems. I just don't care. And the reason I don't care that they don't like my poems is there are a lot of poets, and they have poets that they do like. I don't think you're dumb because you don't like my poems. It's a lot of people's poems, no shade, I'm almost afraid to say this. I don't like Yates. The only reason that Lita poem is in my last book is because I don't like Yates, not because I do. Do you know what I'm like? I don't want to resell in the Byzantium. I take a long nap on that mess. Lita in the Swan, I just think he's not, he doesn't do it for me. But people turn flips behind Yates. There are whole organizations and groups and conferences. Do you know what I'm saying? And I don't think those people are wrong. I just don't think I've gotten there. I didn't always like Stevens, but I really I teach Stevens every semester now. I love Death of a Soldier. I think it's a great poem. Do you know what I'm saying? When people reject my poems, I just think, well, those particular people did not like my poems. But I'm not writing my poems for people to like them. My poems they're in a tradition. They're a part of something bigger and longer, and most of what they are a part of is dead. You know what I mean? I'm writing my, it's nice when somebody likes your poem, especially if you like theirs or if you have respect for them for some reason, but I don't need people to like my poems like that. I always imagined someone would identify with my poems, and those people who do will do whatever they can to help those poems along such that other people might see them in the world. Which is why, and I said this today, there's this big, when you read that list of awards, much of the awards, much of the publications, much of whatever it is that people think of me having achieved, I achieved it because I applied and the right people were reading that day. And that's it. But if you don't apply anyway, you know, there's always, I mean, the thing about my students that I notice is that they decide to reject themselves before they've applied. Who cares if somebody, I don't know why I'm this way, but I just, you know, people telling me no is not about me. They tell me no, that's your business. Somebody's gonna tell me yes. Do you know what I'm saying? It's sort of like, I think of it the way I think about like making love or riding a bike, or, you know, like there's this long period where you never make love. And then suddenly it happens sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, and so I think of like acceptance into magazines in that way. Like there's this long period, everybody's rejecting you. And then sometimes every once in a while, oh look, I'm in a magazine. Oh, these people like oh look, somebody else. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not in any position where I don't still get rejected as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't send poems out in that same way as often, but I can't seem to get a poem in the 3-penny review or in New American Writing, all they ever did. And those, Poetry Magazine rejected every poem in my second book.
No. Wow.
Every poem.
Oh my God.
I sent them some poems. They would always send me a note back, send more poems. I would send more poems. They'd send me a note back, send more poems, they'd send more poems. And then finally, at the time, the editor of the Poetry Magazine was a man named Christian Wyman, I think is his name. And he's a good poet. I mean, he has some good poems. He does. But y'all don't like, they don't like Chris Wyman around here. Anyway, so at some point he did this to me and I just sent him all of the rest of the poems. And he rejected all of the rest of the poems. But I didn't think like, I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't think that, I just thought, oh, I won't be in Poetry Magazine this book. Maybe I'll be in next book. Yeah, but it's just, but 3-penny review rejected every poem from the tradition. And New American Writing, they only publish like once a year, I think. They're like, do you know these people at that journal? They're like divorced or something. It's this couple that's divorced that are the editors of this magazine, which is very exciting to me. But I always imagine when they're it's exciting to me because I'm like, oh, maybe I can get these two people to agree on something. and they keep not agreeing, the divorce is real. So I just, you just keep going and you imagine. Also, I find rejection instructive. I don't think when people reject my poems that it is necessarily true that my poem was so done when I sent it to them. Maybe I need to work on the poem some more. I just imagine that as a possibility. And sometimes changes are made to poems after they're rejected.
All right, well, thank you for that. Yeah, the books are in the lobby.
The books are in the lobby. Buy a book. I told the bookseller that I was gonna sell some books. Don't make no liar out of me. Bye. Thank you so much, Mark Sanders. You know that. What's up, Scott? Y'all see these people buying books?